Welcome to an overview of English 1, Unit 4, Intentional Persuasion. This unit should begin the spring semester, starting in January, and should last approximately 4 weeks. A review of the TEKS for this unit indicates students must cover 13 standards and 25 student expectations. Of the student expectations, more than half are either readiness, supporting, or process standards that will be tested on the STAR exam. During this unit, famous speeches are to be examined for their use of rhetorical structures and devices, and their effectiveness to convince or influence the reader. Evaluation of credibility is revisited as students analyze the relevance and quality of evidence given to support or oppose an argument. Students analyze by comparing and contrasting coverage of the same topic in various media to determine how messages are communicated through the use of visual and sound techniques. Students incorporate their persuasive knowledge and their analysis of media techniques to produce a multimedia presentation to convey a distinctive point of view and to write persuasive text to influence attitudes or actions of a specific audience. The key focus of this unit centers on Knowledge Statement 10, which states students analyze, make inferences, and draw conclusions about persuasive text and provide evidence from text to support their analysis. To demonstrate mastery of this standard, students are expected to analyze the relevance, quality, and credibility of evidence given to support or oppose an argument for a specific audience. They are also expected to analyze famous speeches for rhetorical structures and devices used to convince the reader of the author's propositions. To really understand the two expectations, let's look at each one individually. Student Expectation 10A states that students will analyze evidence. In this slide, we define what the two terms in red mean for teachers and students. To analyze means to examine methodically or in detail the structure of something, especially information, for the purposes of explaining and interpretation. Evidence is an outward sign, something that furnishes proof. We've also indicated in orange what evidence is to be analyzed for, specifically its relevance, quality, and credibility. But how do we do that? This tree allows us to break down Student Expectation 10A further and to specify what students must examine to determine the relevance, quality, and credibility of evidence. As we build the branches, we're able to identify student expectations associated with the unit to determine the scaffolding of learning that students must go through to master the skill required. Using the theory of backward by design, we can then determine that students must first be able to identify the controlling idea and its supporting ideas within a persuasive text. This is SE 8A. It is the supporting ideas that provide the evidence that the students must analyze. Once able to identify the evidence, students can then begin working through the lessons that will help them to determine the relevance of evidence, its quality, and its credibility. Notice that while we look at credibility, students are then moved on to Student Expectation 10B. Student Expectation 10B requires students to look at rhetorical structures and devices. Let's define structures and devices. A structure is an element of an entity in its relationship to other pieces within that entity. And devices are something in a literary work designed to achieve a very particular effect. That's an enormous amount of material to cover, but it really isn't as daunting as it appears. Again, building a tree for this SE, we can look at the structures and talk about what it is that we're supposed to look at. When we say structures, we're really only talking about two things: the rhetorical triangle, author, audience, and purpose, and how that argument is organized, whether it be cause and effect, compare and contrast, or problem and solution. When we talk about devices, what we're really talking about is numerous items, most of which students have been taught through previous years. The key focus of this unit should be how that author uses the Aristotelian appeals, logical fallacies, figurative language, and other devices like repetition, exaggeration, and understatement to build consensus with the reader and to win them over to their side. You may think that 4 weeks is not enough time to teach this unit. However, if you look at the information we just discussed and remove those SEs, saying it took us 2 weeks to cover, you would see that you'd covered half the materials before this unit. In so doing, the remaining material can be divided into 3 categories. Standards 12 and 21 on the left focus on media and how it's used in persuasive technique as we studied it according to media, with images and audio to persuade us. Standards 15, 16, 22, and 25 indicate specific performance items the students must do within the unit, such as produce multimedia presentations, write a persuasive text, or give a presentation. So, these become means by which we'll assess the student throughout the unit. That only leaves the process standards of writing and figure 19, which are part of the activities that the students will undergo as they go through and create their presentations and their essays. So really, 4 weeks is more than enough to complete this unit. That concludes an overview of Unit 4, Intentional Persuasion. Below are additional resources, video clips, texts, essay prompts, and items that you may use as you develop your unit with your PLC.